All right. So every so often, I get to have a guest on the show that is somebody that I really, really, really adore. And in this case, you get to meet my dear friend, Amber Vilhauer, who I have known, my goodness, I think it's probably been 15 years. Like it's been a long time. And I'm just so excited to have you here on the show, Amber. Thank you for saying yes.
This is seriously a dream come true because I love Lisa Larter and we have known each other for a very long time. It's hard to believe that that much time has passed, but I can tell you from minute one, the respect was always at the highest possible level. So I've really looked up to you, Lisa, in your career, and I've really valued the way that we've stayed values aligned, and we have a lot of similar strategies and views on the world, especially the internet marketing world. And it's just really nice when you get to share space with people that you really trust and believe in. And this is going to be a good episode, everyone. It's going to be a great one.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be really, really good. So, you started your business in 2007. I think I started my marketing consulting in 2008. And I thought we could talk about longevity because we've both been in business for a long time. And before we do that, I want to read a couple of stats that I looked up because I thought it was kind of interesting for our listeners. So, 88% of women owned businesses make under $100,000 a year in revenue, not even take home income, revenue annually. And only 1.7 ever exceed the $1 million mark. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Business as a whole, 21% fail in the first year, 40% by year three, 50% by year five, 66% by year 10, 73% by year 15, and 80% by year 20. So you and I are both edging up on year 20. You have been in business for 17 years. So what I want to know is what are some of the lessons that you have learned over the last 17 years? I want you to look back at a younger version of Amber who is starting out in this business. And I know it hasn't all been glorious and rosy. I know that there have been some knee scrapes, there's been some tears, there's probably, if you're like me, there's probably been some moments where you just wanted to pull the plug out of the wall and walk away and fall into one of those statistics, but you haven't. And so what are some of the key lessons that you could share with our listeners? Maybe, there's somebody listening who is in year one, or they're in year five, or maybe they're falling on hard times right now. What are some of the lessons that you've learned that our listeners can glean some hope from?
Yeah, I faced all of that, by the way. Everything that you just described, it was like, yep, yep, yeah, especially that one. Yep. And there were even a couple of times where I felt like the rug got pulled out from underneath me, and I almost lost the company 3 times by things that, just weird change of luck or bad hires or change of whatever it was. So I feel like I've really weathered a lot. And,
Mhm.
when I started this company, Lisa, what's also a wonder to me why I didn't fall into one of those statistics is I had no formal business training. I had no plans to be a business owner in my life. It is what was chosen for me, I think. Divine intervention happened and this business sort of appeared. So I had to really approach this in a way that maybe most don't. I didn't have a formal strategy. I didn't have a business plan or proposal. I didn't have the timeline. I didn't have projections. What I had were non-negotiables. Non-negotiables such as treat people well, do what you say you're going to do, don't go into debt, only spend the money that you earn to get the work done, and work really hard. I mean, these were some of these really simple non-negotiables, but when you make a commitment to yourself in that way and follow through, you're already beating the pack because most
Yeah.
people don't have those non-negotiables. And the vast majority of businesses are unreliable. They don't do what they say they're going to do. They have really shady marketing practices where they promise one thing and then you pay them and either they walk out or they do another or they fall short. I mean, there's just a million things that we've all experienced, but I refused to be one of those stories. So I would say the non-negotiables really helped me in the early years.
Did you know what they were at the very beginning, or did you kind of develop those non-negotiables over time?
No, I pretty much knew them in the beginning. And I can't even say that, somebody told me I should make non-negotiables. I just thought, oh, geez, this woman from Canada just found me on Google and asked if I could help build a guest blogging website for her and manage her authors. And I have no idea like exactly what this is, but I mean, I think I know some of the technical capabilities that I can do this, and I guess I'll just say yes and see what happens. Well, how am I going to be successful? Treat people well, do what I say I'm going to do. I think it just sort of came to me as more of a common sense solution, given that I was walking into an environment that I knew nothing about really. And, I think there was a lot of self-trust as well, listening to my instincts. I know that, if somebody says, hey, I need a press release, and my first thought is, I don't know how to write a press release. My second thought is going to be, I need to go teach myself how to write a press release so that I can fulfill this need that this customer has. Yeah. So there's a self-trust, there's a willingness to get scrappy, get in the trenches, girl, get it done. And that's kind of my core attitude and philosophy in life. I move through fear. I don't let things hold me back. Especially if it's a lack of knowledge. We live in an abundance of knowledge age right now. So you can go out and get that knowledge. Therefore, I think the real secret ingredient was self-trust and trusting my intuition. Honestly, Lisa, when I look back on a lot of the decisions that I've made, from why did you price leverage to scale $5,000? Or why did you decide to do your marketing in this specific way? Or why did you decide to go, get this joint venture partnership? My answer was always, I don't know, it was my gut instinct. And I've learned to really rely on that. And it never took me down the wrong path. The only thing that took me down my wrong path was when I listened to my head or my heart. And I started making decisions based on feelings instead of just like that deeper gut intuition, that voice. And honestly, it just worked out for me between that combination of elements.
So can we talk about scrappiness a little bit? Because one of the challenges that I've seen over the years when I am coaching or advising business owners is people get stuck in analysis paralysis. Perfectionism becomes the obstacle. And I think scrappiness is the way, to steal a Ryan Holiday kind of way of speaking. How did you make perfectionism take a seat to the side and put scrappiness in the driver's seat?
Yeah. Well, to start, I actually don't believe in perfectionism. I think there is no such thing as perfect, and trying to get there is a complete waste of time. I do, however, believe in excellence. In fact, one of my 5 company core values is unwavering excellence. So I know that with effort and energy and intention, I can make something excellent. And then that's when I'm going to stop and call it good enough. And I'm not going to waste time, money, and energy, on trying to get it a little tiny bit better, because I recognize that I already have high standards. And so, whatever I produce is probably still going to be above and beyond what my competitors would have produced. You know what I mean? So there's a part of this where you just have to kind of let go of some of that, and just for the sake of moving forward and generating more revenue and impact in your business so that you can keep going. So I think one thing is it comes down to belief, but actually in the course of writing my latest book, which is called Infinite Impact, I really took a deep dive exploring resistance. Now, Lisa, I had no idea this was going to happen when I started writing the book. It certainly wasn't in the plan or the outline, but it is what emerged. And I recognized after the fact that resistance piece was so important to talk about, because it is so prevalent every single day for entrepreneurs. And in my deep exploration of resistance, I noticed, looking back on thousands and thousands of entrepreneur conversations that I've had over the past almost 2 decades, that many of them faced resistance. And most of those people were resistant around activities where they were at an increased chance of being heard or seen. So, for example, most people who come to me say, oh my gosh, I don't like marketing. I don't want to be an influencer. I don't want to be on social media. I hate all of it. I don't believe in any of it. Yeah, because you have an increased chance of being heard and seen in the world. And when we really look at that belief, what we find is we track this back to childhood. You collected evidence as a child that when you are heard and seen, bad things happen. So why on earth would you want to finish that book and walk out on that stage and do that social media video if you have a belief somewhere in you that when I'm seen, bad things happen? And when I did this work myself, Lisa, I actually wrote a list of all of the evidence that I had collected where I believed that. For example, one of the juicy stories in my book is when I was 16 years old, the first time I tried to use my voice as an advocate to help somebody else that I cared about, I got jumped by 5 girls as punishment. So that really solidifies this belief of don't use your voice or share your observations because you might get
Hurt.
You might get hurt. Thank you.
You may get your ass whooped.
That's what I was thinking. And that's one of so many examples that I could give, but there's a process then when I identify this resistance for entrepreneurs, most of us felt not good enough at some point. So we're on this like repetitive journey to prove that we are good enough. That's why we're crazy enough to be entrepreneurial. We're sick in the head over it. We love the challenge of it, right? Because we're, proving otherwise. Well, part of that is this resistance. And then what I did is, now that we can really talk about this objectively and not hide it in the closet, because that's silly. We don't want to be at this place where we're avoiding and suppressing and pushing and grinding forever. That is not a natural way of being, especially for women. So instead, let's air it out and recognize we did collect this evidence. And if we can also collect evidence that says, when I'm seen and heard, good things happen. For example, in this moment, because I had a willingness to come out and use my voice on this episode, Lisa and I are creating more connection. And now I might have connection with you as the viewer, and now we're better together. And it is very deeply fulfilling for me at the end of the day. And I'm so honored for that opportunity. Wow. So being seen and heard can be a good thing. Oh, well, if that's all it is, I can go out and do more of that. So honestly, so much of that analysis paralysis comes from this belief that really isn't even true. It just needs to be revisited.
So what I'm hearing you say is it's not really perfectionism, it's resistance. And we use perfectionism as the excuse.
Yes, you got it.
So what about excellence though? Because I think that excellence, it can be very subjective.
Sure.
So how do you decide when good enough is good enough?
I trust my instincts on it. For example, if I'm looking at a page in a book and I'm writing something and I'm toiling over it and I'm getting lost in it, and now I'm getting confused by it, now I'm second guessing myself, and now I'm shaming myself. Well, there's your trap. Don't even go down that slippery slide. It's one thing to be editing a document and think, oh yeah, that didn't make sense. And you have speed and momentum. Okay, edit that, fix that, on to the next. Yep, okay, fix that, edit that, move on to the next. And before you know it, you're done with the page. That is an excellent mindset. But when you start going downhill in your mindset and emotional stuff starts coming up, stop, just take a little pause, go do something else, come back until you get that speed and momentum, finish it up, get it out the door. Because guys, we don't have time to waste. What are we doing here? We have real people needing help out there, and you have an ability to help them. We can't sit here and get stuck over, should I do this word or that word? Get it out the door. Let's go.
Yeah. Alan Weiss told me years ago, 80% is good enough, because most people don't notice the extra 20% anyways.
They don't.
He's like, stop beating yourself up on the extra 20%.
Yep.
I find that helpful in some ways, and in other ways, there are things that where the extra 20% makes a difference. And so I think you also have to use judgment to discern when you need to go the extra mile and when
Yeah.
80% is good enough.
I love that you just said that. And it became very clear to me in that moment that I will go that extra mile for relationships and
Hmm.
connection, but I'm not going to do it for an SOP.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I hear you. All right. So, what do you think the main reason is that your business has lasted 17 years outside of the non negotiables?
Ooh, outside of the non-negotiable, I had a very
Outside of
clear
the
answer.
non-negotiables, because you already talked about that. So we already know that that's
Yeah, sure.
foundational.
Okay.
You do what you say you're going to do. You treat
Fair.
people
I'm
well.
ready.
So outside of those non-negotiables, why is your business still around 17 years later?
This is why I love you, Lisa. You ask the tough questions.
No
So I'm not going to say,
easy answers here.
I'm not going to say because I love on people, because that's a non-negotiable. But what I am going to say is consistency.
Mm,
I didn't maybe have the foresight in the very beginning to have that be a non-negotiable, but I am nothing if not consistent. And I have a really, really full wild schedule. I am a single mom CEO baby, and my ex is a firefighter. And so we have a 6-day schedule, 3-day rotation, 6-day schedule in a 7-day world. So my schedule is constantly shifting around, moving. Some days I'm more available, then I'm just not available. And the rest of the business world needs to continue. So I've had to really be super disciplined, knowing my constraints. There's nothing I can do about it. And I've had to just get really disciplined and really focus to sometimes batch work, to be better at leading and delegating to a team, using scheduling software and platforms, whatever I possibly can, so that I stay consistent. Because at the end of the day, nobody really cares about my constraints. It's not their problem, it's my.
right.
So my clients need me to be consistent and steady every single day. And I have created appropriate support around me to make sure that they are buffered and protected by my wild side and my wild schedule. I think consistency is something that a lot of people struggle with.
Mhm.
You've experienced it where you've committed to blogging. So you blog, you blog, you blog, and then you just stop. And then 6 months later, you're like, oh yeah, I should revisit the blogging thing. And you blog and you blog and you blog, and then you stop again. There was no point to doing it to begin with if you are just going to be inconsistent. I honestly advise my clients, don't even start unless you are committed to your email list, committed to blogging on a weekly basis, committed to posting on social media, no matter what. No excuses. If you want longevity, no excuses here.
Mhm.
Consistency every time.
Awesome. I love that answer. I'm very, very, very much the same because I just, I mean, it's interesting. I think back to when my younger sister first got into she graduated college and started in the workforce, and she asked me for advice when she got her first job. And I said, do what you say you will do. And if you can't do what you say you will do, tell somebody far enough in advance that you don't inconvenience them, and then tell them when you will do it, and then make sure you do what you say you're going to do. And so hearing you say, do what you say you're going to do, like to me, that's like one of those things that when you are consistent with your word, then people really trust you. And people don't necessarily think about their word when they say they're going to send a newsletter, for example, every Tuesday. Then all of a sudden they're, well, nobody's going to notice that I missed one, and then I missed
Uh,
another. And then the next thing you know, you get
no.
an email from somebody 6 months later and you don't even remember subscribing, and you wonder why everybody unsubscribes on your list. It's because of the lack of attention to consistency. So I hear
And
you.
I would love to insert one other thing that's not commonly talked about, but I want to invite you to also consider consistency in your mental and emotional presence with the people around you, right? Because,
Mhm.
for example, if on one customer call, you're really distracted and you're sort of like not at your highest and best, but then the next call, you're like a fireworks show, you're so on fire. That's inconsistent for your clients. And you don't want them to have to wonder who's showing up on their call today,
Mhm.
which side of you. And even from an emotional standpoint, what do you need to do in the rest of your life in order to make sure that when you show up as the
Mhm.
CEO, that you are steady for your team? And I'm not saying you're hiding and you're suppressing and you're being fake. I would never do that. I'm talking about a more natural way of living your life.
Yeah.
What do I need to do in all areas of my life so that I can show up consistently for everybody else around me and myself? Because I don't want to have to melt down at the end of
Mhm.
the day or harbor all of these secret feelings and let them out in a closet door when nobody's looking. Like, I want to live more naturally and more free. And that can happen if we have the courage to really look at each of the individual decisions that we're making and make a list of, what do I need to do? Who do I need to be around so that I can operate at my highest and best in all areas of my life naturally?
Mhm.
And even that level of consistency is going to have a huge ROI on your company and total longevity.
I think that's such a valuable point because on the opposite side, we can all sit here and think of someone we know who has unpredictable behavior and how
Yes.
awful it feels to be on the receiving end of who am I going to
It's
get
awful.
today? And so it seems like common sense that you should be consistent in your behavior, but I don't know that everyone takes common sense and puts it into common practice. So I think that was a really,
Well said.
really wise piece of advice for our listeners. Know who you are. And, a small tip to that is if you have client calls every day, make sure you have a buffer in between calls so you can shake stuff off. You can go to the bathroom, you can grab something to eat, like set
Reset.
yourself up to
Mhm.
be successful so that you can be consistent. All right. Next question. 17 years ago, long time. If you were starting over today, so here's a game that I play with my clients when they're getting stuck on strategy. I say, I want you to pretend that I'm giving you $200,000 right now to restart your business. But you can't keep any of the clients you have and you can't keep any of the team members you have. You have to start all over from scratch. What would you do differently?
I would probably do the same thing I did. Which is great. And I've never really thought about it in this way before. But honestly, what I would do is I would get a piece of paper and get into alignment. To me, that means I'm defining who is my one person, my avatar that I'm going to be doing all of this for. My person, her name is Heather, know everything
Mhm.
about her. She started in my imagination and now she has multiple stages in her customer journey with me. And I know all of the intimate things about her. So I have to know who I'm doing this business for. Next, I have to understand my vision. Like, how do I want Heather to feel and what do I want? How do I want her to be impacted every day? Which is different, Lisa, than traditional vision is taught. Like, I want to help 10 million people. I actually have learned that to go into the micro
Mhm.
because I can control those little moments of impact. I can't control whether or not I get the option and the opportunity to help 10 million people. Like, I hope I do, but I have no idea. I want to know that I'm making my impact and meeting my goals every single day because it gives me momentum and confidence to keep going. The third thing that I would put on my piece of paper is really, what does this all do for me at the end of the day? Like, if I'm in service to Heather in these ways and it's working, she has an impact, she's making money or whatever. Well, what does that do for me at the end of the day? And actually, for me personally, it's less about the money I'm making. It's more about the feeling I have inside, because the first 20 years of my life, I felt awful inside. I didn't belong. I didn't have friends. I was shamed. I was gaslit. I was not in good environments growing up. And when you experience a lot of those ugly feelings and then get to experience the better ones, it's like, what? This is what's possible? Okay, I want to shape my entire life around these good feelings and make sure that I can feel them as much as humanly possible. So
Mhm.
that's just one girl's journey. But for me, I need to know that every client I have is only going to elevate me. If I have a client that doesn't elevate me, guess what? I let them go. It's just not a fit. If I have a team member, if I have a friend, if I have a piece of content If it doesn't elevate me, that is my signal that I'm headed in the wrong direction. So
What
I
does
would
that
give
mean? Can you
means like, does
describe
it
what that
activate
means?
me? Does it light me up? Like when I like this podcast, Lisa, coming
Mhm.
in all day, I was excited to be here with you
Me too.
because you light me up. So that's my signal that, okay, I'm supposed to be in relationship with Lisa Larter. Got it. Super simple for me to experience that versus I have to go fill out a US consensus survey from the government later today. Ooh, I don't want to do that. Well, that's a signal to me that if it weren't required by the government, I wouldn't do it.
Mm.
So
So
I
if
think
you feel like you have to do something with a client, they're probably not the right fit. When you feel like you get to do something, then they
exactly.
are the right fit. So paying attention to those signals and cues. Can you give
Absolutely.
us an example
Mhm,
of a time where a client didn't light you up and you had to let them go, and
mhm.
how you manage that conversation? Because I bet you there's people listening and they're thinking, oh, I have some of those clients, and they're afraid to let the client go. And
Mhm.
sometimes we end up hanging on to clients longer than we should because we need the money, and
Yep.
we don't put our own emotional well-being at the forefront. It can definitely be a difficult conversation. I know I've had to let clients go over the course in the history of my company too, but I'd love to hear how you do it. You don't have to tell us about the client, but just how do
Yeah.
you set up that conversation with someone?
It's happened lots of times actually. And I'm going to be really transparent because I don't know another way to be that in the beginning years, I used manipulation to do it. I would find something that they did and shape it as the reason why. And I would try to come out as, the good guy. And I wasn't like shaming them, but I certainly didn't want them to think that I had done anything wrong.
Mhm.
Because I don't like getting in trouble. I don't like doing things wrong. And so I will be honest that there were some ways of like manipulating the conversation so that I came out looking good, using it under the banner of needing to maintain my reputation or whatever else.
Right.
And it was only later in my career when I realized that manipulation was what I was taught. That's how we speak to people. My whole life, that is the way people spoke to me. So I just thought that's what everybody did. And that's why I think it's important to share this really openly and transparently, because now that I have seen that behavior, you can't unsee it and it's completely unacceptable and unnecessary. And so I'm willing to put myself out there in that way to shine a light on it, because I think that in a lot of business practice, we point the finger on the other people and we
Mhm.
make them be the reason why. And sometimes that's just not true. When I really look back, Lisa, on those situations where those individuals were not a fit, they just weren't a fit because they didn't align with my values. And guess what? Like, that's okay. We have
Mhm.
diversity in this big world. And aren't we thankful for that? That everybody's not like the same exact person stamped out 8 billion times. I love diversity. I think it's really important. It's the yin and yang of life. Nature teaches us about it. It's not going anywhere. And it's okay if we aren't values aligned, but at least I can be honest and genuine and loving and calling it out, because the chances are they must feel the tension and the conflict too, and they wouldn't want that if they could have a choice. So what I've learned to do now, Lisa, I'm not even going to lie, I'm just going to say up front, hey client, I really need to have a tough conversation with you that I no longer feel like the highest and best fit for this project. And I understand that you took a risk, you trusted me, and you may have felt really good about the direction that we're going in, but I am feeling a lot of tension and conflict in these conversations. I don't feel like we're sharing the exact same values, and that's okay. It's not a you thing, it's not a me thing, it's just a fit thing. And I really believe that there is somebody else in the world who is going to sing your song and match your values and meet your exact needs. And I'm just really sorry that I couldn't be that fit for you. But here's what I am going to do. Although I'm going to say this is going to be the transition phase in our relationship, I'm going to set you up for success, because part of my core values is to always do the right thing and treat people really well with respect and kindness. So I'm going to document every single thing that we've talked about so far. I'm going to set your next team up for success. And if they even want to get on a call to pick my brain to make sure that the transition goes smoothly, that's my commitment to you, because I do care about you and I respect you, even though I'm unable to continue working together with you. Thank you so much. I'm here for any questions. I mean, it's honest. It's honest. How refreshing is that? And if somebody on the receiving end of that wants to be a nightmare, that says a lot about them.
I would say that the opposite though. What do you do when they're like, no, it's working for me, but I don't want to stop working with you. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I really value and appreciate that you just said that, Ben, or whatever your name is. But unfortunately, I've made this decision just because I am feeling unable to show up as my highest and best for you, just because of what I'm experiencing. And that is a non-negotiable for me in business. I have to feel like I am maximizing my potential with each client I interact with. And unfortunately, I'm just unable to do that in this environment. It's not a reflection on you, but again, I'm going to make sure that I set you up for success. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And it's a polite no, and going back to repeat what I've already shared with them, because sometimes people need to hear it twice in the exact same way, not because you're treating them like an idiot, but because maybe they have some emotional stronghold or trigger around this where they didn't really hear you the first time. And I have had to do that before, and I just stay true to my own needs, because at the end of the day, put your oxygen mask on first. And again, if they're not about that, that says a lot about them. You handled it in love and honesty and integrity. You did right by them. Like, you did your part. And you don't have to go down a shame spiral because for the first time in your life, maybe you stuck up for yourself. So celebrate that you reclaimed your power. And this is your business at the end of the day. It's your life at the end of the day, and it deserves to be protected.
It's true. Very, very, very wise words. So my next question for you: how has becoming a mom and then becoming a single mom made you think differently about your business? Because I got to tell you, I don't have kids. I have dogs. And I can put a dog in a crate if I have to. And the worst thing that happens is they pee and poop in their crate. And I can deal with that, right? That's it, worst, push comes to shove. And I mean, trust me, that doesn't happen very often. But it's having a dog is nowhere the same as having a human, having children. I have two sisters. Between the two of them, they have 7 kids. I am in awe at times of how they juggle their schedules to do all the things that they do for their children. So I'm really curious, because I know there are people listening to this show, and some of them are moms. Some of them are on the verge of leaving their spouse, and some of them are single moms. And I think that your perspective on this can be really, really valuable to them.
Sure. Well, I think if you can try to keep your family together, you should try. I mean, I think that that's, typically better for the family unit. In my case, I didn't feel like there was a way of getting out on the other side of it. Was sort of like we were both drowning and one wasn't stronger than the other to pull us out of it. And so instead of actually drowning, the decision was made. And I will say it made things exponentially more difficult. Luckily, I thrive under challenge and pressure. So if you are not somebody that thrives under challenge and pressure, I would definitely consider that. I'd be also considering the amount of help you have around you. Like Lisa, I have no family in my area, none, not in the whole state of Colorado. I don't have a bunch of girlfriends. I have a few select friends that I have because I give so much of myself all day long in my work that when I get off, like I'm a bit of an introvert. I play extrovert, but I'm an introvert. I love my alone time, which has been cut significantly by having a child. And so what I would say is some of the things that I have learned about myself in this season of life One is that the days of me being able to eat a long dinner and sit down and watch a few hours of TV or go on an extended vacation and just relax, like those days are gone right now. And that's okay. I'm in a different season of life at this moment. It's not
right now is the key word.
Yeah, it's just a season, and
Right.
seasons change. So I am dedicated to the season. I instead have to find little teeny tiny pockets of time. So, for example, I might have 4 minutes to eat something before I head into the next call instead of an hour-long lunch break. I may only be able to weight lift and exercise for 15 minutes instead of 45. I may forego my aspects of my morning routine so I can get an extra 30 minutes of sleep that I really need because I put it all on the line every single day. I, again, kind of liken this to our beginning conversation, and it's not about perfection. It's about what are your priorities and getting really clear on that. And sleep has been a number one priority to me. I don't mess with my sleep. I get consistent sleep because I've learned that when I sacrifice that, nothing else works as well. So again, what are your non-negotiables as a parent? I would say I also had to negotiate with myself about my career, especially, Lisa, as my book came out and it is going around the world faster than I can track. And it's really cool and surprising and fun and exciting. Well, I've been getting a lot of speaking requests and the biggest ones of my life, Lisa. And it's like the stuff I've always like wondered if I could go down that path. And I've had to say no or come up with compromises. So for example, there's one in October. They wanted me for the full 2 days. They wanted multiple workshops, panels, the whole thing with me as the headliner. And I said, I'm sorry, I have my son, and that's my number one priority. So I can give you one day. And you can cram up the keynote, 2 panels, and 2 workshops in that day. I'll be around for anything you need in that one day. And then I'm leaving because my priority is to be with my son, because that's the parent that I choose to be. And they can be flexible, and they are, all of them. They're like, okay, one day we'll take it. So I think just knowing that it's not going to be perfect, know what your priorities are, stay focused and disciplined, and find little pockets to take care of yourself and stay true to you at the end of the day. You don't have to buy into any of the other shiny objects and distractions. At the end of the day, I wanted to break generational chains, and I wanted to be an outrageously present and awesome mom for Clay. And I can say that not only am I doing that, but I've maintained my profitable 7-figure business. I've maintained my reputation, and I've maintained my sanity. And I feel like that deserves an award.
I feel like we should be having a glass of wine and toasting to that.
Let's
That's
do
amazing.
that.
Yes, yes,
It's
that's awesome.
possible. It's
That
hard.
is awesome. That is awesome. Okay, I have one last question for you. I want to be
Okay.
respectful of our time.
Yeah.
One key thing that you would tell people listening to help them maximize revenue growth and profit in their business. One thing you do to ensure that your revenues stay where you want them to be and you always ensure that you have a profit.
Pouring to people. My answers are common to most questions. It always comes back to people, and really focusing not just on the number of people, focusing on the quality emotional connection with people. So Lisa, for example, I was running my membership call earlier. I have a monthly membership. It's month to month. We meet twice a month in my Zoom room for an hour. There were a bunch of people on today's call. And I, in that moment, set an intention that I wanted every single person to feel heard, seen, and valued by me. And it's tough doing that in an hour with a bunch of people. But I first set that intention, and I went around the room methodically, calling out people's names, welcoming them, praising them out of the chat, praising them for using their voice and coming off of mute, really just making sure I was touching and seeing every single person in the room. Because when that happens, when you help a person to feel seen, especially in today's economy and environment with everything else that's going on and their self-confidence plummeting like an apple falling from a tree, they don't forget it.
Mhm.
And they want more of it. And so what I do is I just keep loving on people. I focus on what I can give instead of what I can get. It's actually backwards the way I think a lot of entrepreneurs are thinking. They're like, I need more money. Oh my God, how am I going to get $3,000 more? It's like, whoa, that
Yeah.
will come if you focus on giving and focus on generating real connection with people, like
Yeah.
really caring. It will
Yeah.
come back to you tenfold. You don't have to wonder where your next client is coming from.
I say that to people all the time when they get worried about, like, I mean, scope creep is a real thing, especially in marketing. Um, but I'm always saying to people, trust that it'll come back to you on the back end.
It
Because I
does.
think that, when you look at it on a project or a task by task basis, there are times where you might lose some money. But when you
Yeah.
focus on doing the right thing for people and you build long-term
Yes.
relationships with people, it always works out in the end. I
Yeah.
believe
You
that.
got to be in this for word of mouth
Yeah.
because paid advertising may or may not work. Algorithms may or may not be in your favor. The latest marketing reel, trend, whatever,
Mhm.
it's going to be a phase out. But what
Right.
you can count on is word of mouth. And that is the most powerful form of advertising. People have been referring me to others my whole career. I have not had to
Mhm.
worry about clients for so long, like
I
since
know.
year two when I finally got it.
Yeah, I hear you. It's the same with me. I mean, I do a lot of marketing. I blog, I have a podcast, I do newsletters. I do a lot of visibility stuff to stay visible,
Yep.
but I I mean, it's the same thing. It's word of mouth, it's referrals, it's people telling other people about you. It's going
Yep.
to networking events and meeting people who immediately connect with you and want to do business with you. It's
Yeah.
all about the relationships. I totally believe that.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes, which speaks to our relationship. I
Yay.
mean,
I love
we
our
have,
relationship.
yeah, but I mean, you and I have been connected, I think I said, what, close to 15 years. Like, it's been a long time. And I think it's been almost 15 years. And I, what I love about our relationship and our connection is we can go a year, 2 years without talking, and then we can get on a Zoom call and or meet up at an event and we just pick up right where
Yeah.
we left off. And
Yeah.
I think that speaks to the depth of the connection. And I think that when you focus on things like that with people and you stay in touch, and I mean, it's not like we don't ever, but I'm just saying we don't have to be in each other's space every single day to still have a
Exactly.
really great relationship. And I think that sometimes people think that they've got to be on with people all the time. And it's like quality is more important than quantity.
Every time. That's the
Yeah.
season that we're headed into in the online world.
Yeah.
More is not more anymore. So you've got to
Yes.
cut that thinking. We've been improperly conditioned by other internet marketing circles. You honestly could have an enormously profitable business with an email list of less than 1,500 people
Hmm.
and a social following of less than 500 people.
Hmm.
You can have a seven-figure business off of that. I'm
Yeah.
telling you right
Oh,
now,
yeah.
it's possible.
Oh, I know. I still laugh when people invite me to their summits
I know,
and
me too.
the qualifier, you have to have 10,000 people on your mailing list. And I'm like, no, I don't have 10,000 people on my mailing list, but I
No,
do have a business that's generated over seven figures for almost a decade now. Is that not interesting to you? Is the fact
I
that I
know.
have a small list in a big business that not more important than a big list and a small business? But it's not. It's because they're looking for what's in it for them. They're not looking at what's in it for their
Exactly.
audience.
I
And
know.
that's where
This is
you and
what
I
I
are
love
so
about you,
aligned,
Lisa.
right? Just we
Lisa
call it the
gets it.
BS.
Lisa
It's like
gets
I'm on a rant lately. The newest marketing thing that I see online that just drives me bananas is people are adding up every dollar they've made for every year that they've been in business. And now instead of being a seven-figure business, they're a $25 million company. I'm like, okay, come on, enough with the smoke and mirrors. So
Smoke and
like,
mirrors.
just be
Smoke
honest
and
with people.
mirrors.
And why do we just keep talking about top line revenue and never talking about how much money you actually
No
get to keep? Do
kidding.
you pay yourself a 6-figure salary? Do you have money in the bank? Do you like,
Exactly.
anyways, rant. That's a
I'm
rant
with
for a
you,
whole other
girlfriend.
conversation.
100%. 100%
Yes.
with you, aligned.
All right. Okay, Amber, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your generous, kind, caring, loving spirit. And for those of you listening, you will be able to find all the links to Amber in the show notes and her book, Infinite Impact. You can find it on Amazon. I highly recommend it. It is going to be as joyous a read as listening to her is. Thank you so much for being here, Amber.
Thanks.
And thank you all for listening.